Well, here we are, the moment that we've all been waiting for, and that is the simple rules of differentiation. So we've just spent a week and a half learning how to do differentiation by first principles, which is a long way of doing differentiation. And as soon as you do differentiation by first principles with anything other than a reasonably basic polynomial, it gets very complicated very quickly. So what we're moving on to now is the simple rules, the little shortcut. Before you go any further, please make sure that you've actually done the investigation on page 394 in your textbook. Pause the video now and come back to it. Okay, so just a little bit of terminology before we go any further. If we're differentiation is the process of finding a derivative or gradient function. So if we differentiate something, it just means find the derivative, find f dash x, and so on. Now, quite specifically, when we've got f of x, we find the derivative f dash of x by differentiating with respect to the variable x. So that means if there happens to be any other variable in your function, it behaves like a constant. We don't do too much of that in year 11. That's just something to be aware of for year 12. A little bit more of notation. We've been through this in class and in other videos. So on to the rules. Now we've got four rules here to begin with, three of which are virtually the same rule. So I'm going to collapse those into a single rule. And that is this: if f of x equals ax to the n, where a is a coefficient multiplying the x term and n is the constant, then the derivative with respect to x is a n x to the n minus 1. So what happens is the index, the n, comes down as a factor and multiplies the coefficient, and the power n is reduced by 1. Let's do some simple examples. All right, I've lost my pen for some reason. All right, wrong pen. If y equals 4x cubed, then y dash is going to equal 3 multiplies by the 4. So you can write it out longhand if you want, and I'll do that for the moment. 3 times 4x, and then it's 3 minus 1. With a little bit of practice, in fact, with not very much practice at all, you'll be able to do all of that in your head, and you'll simply go 3 times 4 is 12, x, 3 minus 1 is 2, so 12x squared. Let's say we've got y equals minus 5x to the power of 11. The derivative of that is going to be 11 times negative 5 is negative 55x to the power of 11 minus 1 is 10. So that's the basic rule. The first specific rule that we've got here is what to do when the function is a constant. So let's say y equals 7. Really, that's y equals 7 times x to the power of 0, isn't it? Because x to the power of 0 is 1. So the derivative is going to be the 0 multiplies the 7, x, and then the 0 index decreases by 1 to give us minus 1. But because we're multiplying by 0, the overall result is simply 0. So anytime, and that's the first rule, anytime we differentiate a constant, so some constant called c, it differentiates to 0. The next example is, what do we do when we've got y equals x to the n? Let's say x to the 5. There's no number written out the front, so we know that 1 is implied. So the derivative is going to be 5 times 1 is 5x to the power of 1 less, which is 4. And then the last one, when we've got a constant times a function, which is really what we've been doing all along. Here's another one, y equals 3x to the 5. So this is our function, and this is the constant multiplying the function. If we just did y equals x to the 5, y dash would be 5x to the 4. When we're doing 3x to the power of 5, y dash is 5 times 3 is 15, x to the power of 4, and you can see that there's a factor of 3 there. So, or factor of 3 going in that direction rather. So what's happening here is if we've got a function multiplied by a constant, then the derivative is the derivative of the function multiplied by the constant. So they really are all encapsulated in this one rule here. The only other one that's the addition rule is if you add two things together in your function, then you add their derivatives together in the derivative. So if y equals 6x to the power of 4 plus 3x cubed, then y dash is going to be 4 times 6 is 24, x, 4 minus 1 is 3, plus, because it's part of the rule over here, part of the equation, 3 times 3 is 9, x, 3 minus 1 is 2, 9x squared. And they are our basic rules. In the next video, I'll go through some examples in your booklet.